Chapter 15. The queen was delighted. Thanks to that silly little thief, she was going to find Snow White, and when she did, she was going to get rid of her. She strode across her chamber, grabbed a small box meant for Snow White's heart, and clutched it in her long fingers. Then she twisted it. A small mirror on her vanity. A large map of the kingdom appeared on the wall next to the vanity, and behind it, hidden from view, was a secret chamber. Slipping inside, the queen took a deep breath. The smell of potent flowers and herbs filled her nose. This was where she housed her magic, which she had kept hidden from the king long before and from all others since. Standing in front of a long table, she eyed the various vials on a shelf in front of her. She took several down, placed them on the table, and began to pour a little of this and a little of that into a jar. As she worked, she sang to herself, calling forth the magic's full power, brewing something dark and otherworldly. When she was finished, she took a deep breath and then drank deeply from the jar. She swallowed every last drop, then turned from the room toward a hidden staircase. The stairs spiraled down into the dark recesses beneath the castle. Making sure the door behind her was shut, she moved down the stairs. As she did, the potion began to take effect. Her skin began to wrinkle, her nose grew longer, and her teeth began to rot. A breeze from below whipped her hair around her face, and as she watched, it transformed from dark brown to pure white. Her regal gown turned into rags, and by the time she reached the bottom of the stairs, she was no longer the gorgeous queen she had been mere moments before. Now she was a wretched old hag. Surprisingly, though, it did not make her upset. Instead, she cackled with glee. This was the first step in her latest plan to rid herself of Snow White. Stepping into the room deep beneath her chambers, she gazed around. The huge dungeon made the smaller space upstairs look like a child's lab. Here were her darkest potions, her strongest poisons, her most evil herbs. In the middle of the room, a giant cauldron was mounted above the floor. Next to it, on an ornate stand, a worn book lay open. The pages were yellowed and frayed with use. The queen hobbled to it and flipped through the book. Scanning the various spells, she stopped when she found the one she had been looking for. Hungrily, she read over the directions, her cackle echoing off the stone walls. Running her fingers over the words, she made sure she had all the ingredients. And then she checked one last thing. Antidote, she read silently. True love's kiss. She cackled louder. Snow White had barely left the castle. Her father was long gone, and her mother was in the ground. Deep in the dungeon, Jonathan pulled desperately against the chains of his cell wall. He had to escape. He had to warn Snow White. That won't get you free. Jonathan squealed at the sound of someone else's voice. He turned and peered into the shadows of the cell. To his surprise, he saw the outline of another man, with his back up against the far wall. His head was bowed, a dark cloak covering his hair. It had kept him hidden from Jonathan's view, until then. Catching his breath, Jonathan narrowed his eyes. The cell was getting lighter as the sun rose, and now he could make out exactly who his cellmate was. The huntsman. He stopped struggling long enough for his eyes to fall on a still cuffed skeleton that lay on the ground. Standing over the cauldron, the queen began to throw in a drop of this, a dash of that. The liquid in the cauldron began to bubble and belch out unnaturally colored fumes. A foul odor filled the air, but the queen was immune. She didn't notice the eyes of her vulture on her either, as it watched its mistress from a nearby perch. She was focused on one thing, and one thing only, creating the potion that would destroy Snow White. When she was sure it was ready, she curled her long, bony fingernails around the wooden box. The huntsman was supposed to have put Snow White's heart in it. Instead, he had substituted a ripe red apple. And now she would use the same apple to trick the girl. She used a long spoon to dip the apple into the potion and let it sit for several moments. More smoke billowed forth, and the pungent smell of death and decay became stronger. When enough time had passed, she lifted the apple. A thick blue sludge oozed off the skin and back into the cauldron. The queen cackled once again with glee. She waved her fingers over the sickly skin, turning it from blue to bright, shiny red. It now looked like an ordinary piece of fruit, just like the one Snow White had picked in the orchard with her father and mother. But biting into this apple wouldn't fill her mouth with sugary sweetness. Gingerly, the queen placed the now poisoned apple back in the box and tucked it into her robes. The best part of her whole plan? Snow White would never suspect a harmless old lady. She was too kind, too trusting, too lovely. The queen would use those very qualities against her. She let out another cackle. She turned and made her way toward the far end of the chamber. Water lapped against the edge of a stone dock, and in the inky liquid, a single-person gondola floated. She had kept this underground boat at the ready, knowing someday she would have use of it. Someday had arrived. She pushed off and rowed herself through the exit and out into the dim light of early evening. Dusk had settled since she entered the chamber, and it was only a matter of time before the sun sank below the horizon and pitched the forest into darkness. And somewhere out there, Snow White waited, unaware that danger was coming to find her.